I'm just going to jump right in. So we all just collectively experienced that absolutely powerful documentary. There was a portion of it where Josh, I think you had said that you guys were actually still in the hospital when you had a conversation and you had decided that you were going to fight back. You talked about it. Could you share a little bit about that conversation as much as you would like to? What was that conversation? What was that moment like?
Sure. Thanks everybody for being here. So Amanda we were in the hospital. She was early stages of her recovery, and we had a pretty open conversation about how, in as many words, we knew what happened to us was just painfully wrong. And we knew that there were going to be so many people in Texas and in other states that were going to go through a similar experience that we went through as all of these laws were being passed and the attack was really starting across the country. And it didn't take us very long to get through that conversation to know that we were going to start fighting back against what we just knew was inherently wrong.
Yeah, and I think we had no idea what it was going to look like, what it would turn into. I think I probably thought that I was going to write like a sternly worded letter to the governor. Like, I did not expect it to turn into a lawsuit, a documentary, all of these things that followed. But we just knew that something bad was happening and we had been wronged, and we wanted to fight back and stand up for what we believe in. And we just kind of followed along as the road took us on this crazy path that we've been on since.
So headlines aside, political talking points aside, what do you most want us all to take away from the documentary today?
Go on. I think when we talk about this issue in terms of politics and headlines, it often feels very much like, oh, this is a one-off, or this is just a story or a blip. And these are real people. We are real people that experienced this. And it takes an enormous toll on someone, and not just the individual, but on us, on our families, on our friends. I mean, the reach of what happened to us is so widespread, and that's true every time you see a story or a headline like ours. That's a real person that's suffering, and they're living their daily life having to deal with what happened to them, and their friends are, and their family is. And I think the stories that we see in the headlines are not even the tip of the iceberg, but this is happening all over the country. It is so widespread, and these are people who are suffering and are hurting. And I just want people to keep that in mind when they see these headlines or hear these stories. Just think about the real people who are being impacted, and know that this isn't something that is a flash in the pan and then you heal and you move on. Like, we are forever changed as a result of what happened to us, and so is my family and friends. And I think that's probably true of most people. You probably know better than most.
We kind of touched on Texas doing some new laws and Oklahoma following suit. I don't think there has been a moment where I don't constantly see sneaky attempts to push further, push harder. This idea that the election has come and gone and they just left it up to the states. If you're not closely paying attention, would you agree that it is just a constant battle where they're trying to continue to take and take and take?
Yeah, I think actually what Amanda was saying is like a perfect segue into that question, because if you think about what's happening with our story and how it sort of ended with the fight against the state of Texas, it was very clear that they did not care what was actually happening to people. They did not care what was happening to Amanda or to myself or to any of the other plaintiffs. It was very clear that they did not care about the people that they represent. You saw that in the courtroom, you saw that in the Texas Medical Board, and it was very clear that they do not care about these people and what happens to them. And I think once this affront starts happening, we now see this constant, what more can we take? What more can we take? What more can we take? And it's definitely You could say slippery slope, maybe would be one way to describe it, but there's no question that once they get a little bit of success in these areas and there isn't enough pushback, they will continue the affront on people's freedom, and we're seeing that every single day.
So to follow up, as Amanda's staff's partner, what would you say to men who maybe don't think that they have a say in this battle or don't know where to stand in this fight?
I think the first thing I would say is that obviously women's reproductive care impacts everybody in this country, men, women, it doesn't matter your gender, what age you are in life, right? We know that this impacts families, it impacts everybody in this country. I think that part maybe is pretty obvious for people, especially in this audience. I think another message that I've been thinking about a little bit more recently is I think men sometimes feel like in this fight, maybe it isn't our bodies, maybe it doesn't impact us as directly as it does women. Maybe we know it sort of impacts us, but not in the same way. And what I would say to that is once you start an affront on one group of people's rights and freedom, it's just the beginning. It's just the opening to go after rights of everybody in this country, the freedoms of everybody in this country. Those freedoms include freedom of speech and so many others. We could go on and on. And so for men, I would say, if you don't start fighting the first sign of this injustice, it will eventually become even more direct in your life in ways you could never predict.
And I mean, Ben, I know that I continually feel this way, and so I think I'm going to speak on behalf of the audience and assume that they oftentimes, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to feel hopeless. It's easy to look at this and everything else going on and think like, why me, how me, just all of the things. So what would you say that one keeps you going and two could help others either get started or keep going?
Well, they're not making it easy on us, are they? You've got to really dig to find the hope some days, these days. I have been very fortunate with this documentary, with the presidential campaign last year, that I've gotten to travel quite a bit around the country, doing events like this, meeting lots of people, sharing our story. And what I see time and time again is rooms like this, filled with people who are still engaged, they care, they are moved, they are fighting in their own ways. And I talk to these folks and I look out at a room like this and I think, well, how could I not keep going? I mean, people are doing this work every single day in their own communities. Of course I'm going to keep going. And it gives me strength and it gives me a lot of hope. I think also, when we leave Oklahoma and go back to Texas, I'll think about how, each one of you now has the power to have this same conversation that we're having right now in your own community, around your kitchen table, with your own friends, in your church communities. And that's huge. That's so powerful and so important. And so I really hope you do have those conversations. I know they're not easy, but I think it's the work that we all need to commit to continue doing.
Do we have time for some audience questions? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's craft those. And see.
I would be really impressed to hear your mother saying everything that she said. I'd wondered if that had spread throughout her neighborhood, that she is changing her mind about things. I thought, oh, that's the move to the boomers was really hard. So just wondered how what that had affected her and her life.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. My mom's a boss. I love my mom. I like to say she's become like a little Repro warrior. I mean, she was out thumping the pavement for the campaign. I think it's the first time she's ever voted for a Democrat. And she just, really was moved on this issue because of what happened to us. And she wanted to prevent the same harm befalling anyone else. And so, yes, her neighbors, her friends, I think whoever's in front of her at McDonald's, I mean, she's moving everybody. But it's not just my mom either. It's my dad. has been changed. My aunt was telling me the other day that she was having this conversation with someone at the post office. I mean, Josh's family is doing the same work, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes for you to have a very personal experience with these types of issues to be moved. And so that's a big part of our mission, us and our entire family, is to help people see how this could impact them before it does, because we don't want this to impact anyone else. We want them to, I guess, kind of see the light before they're hurt by it.
And I would add to that, I'll use my parents as an example. We both grew up in Indiana, and we live in a conservative, maybe slightly purple part of Indiana. We're from Fort Wayne. And one of the things that happened with my parents' friend group is my parents right away, and most of them are fairly to quite conservative. And my parents directly had these conversations with them. This is what happened. Don't you think this is wrong? Don't you think that something should change? And a year ago or so, the response still would have been, well, yeah, that's terrible, but we also need to make sure that all these other things that we believe in, we sort of want those still to happen. And so it was sort of easy to kind of put this one issue aside. And what's changed with my parents' friend group, at least as my parents tell me these days, is now there isn't a lot of talk of politics, because my parents know that their friends are ashamed in a way of sort of how they ignored what happened to us as a warning sign to what could be coming with other issues in this country. And so I think it's just a really good reminder that having, like Amanda said, these conversations where you share a story about people like us or whoever it is, that it plants a seed in people's mind where they can remember, oh, it's not right that this happened. That's not what should happen. And then there may be another issue unrelated to this one or related to this one where they say, that's not right either. And it gives people a permission structure and sort of a way to start to remember how all of these things connect together. So just wanted to kind of say each conversation is really important, and you don't know how it will impact someone, 6 to 8 months in the future.
Hi, thank you so much, first of all. Such a gift to have you all in person. And I'm here with my mom and grandmother. But a question that I have, I think it's what you all have gone through and so many others is just so sickening to me. And I'm curious what conversations you've had with lawmakers and what reasoning do they give of, like, I won't fight this to, and then on the other side, what has changed their tone, if you've had any of those experiences?
Yeah, the conversations with lawmakers have been challenging, to say the least. I think that the next phase of the fight is going to be at the local level. I think that's where we're going to make the biggest leaps in the short term. And they're not big leaps by any means. I mean, they're crumbs at this point. But that's something that myself, along with many of my other fellow co-plaintiffs, have been doing, is advocating at the state level. So in the Texas state Capitol, we've been working with lawmakers, and when you can talk to them one-on-one, and they're not on a stage or in front of a camera or, in front of whatever right to life groups, they listen, and they do. You can tell they might not say it, but you can tell that they are moved by these personal stories, and they struggle with making the right decision versus appealing to their base or appealing to donors or whoever it may be. So we've seen a lot of battling in the Texas State House with Democrats and Republicans as they try to sort of thread the needle with some of these bills. Now, it hasn't gone super well in this special session, but I am encouraged that if and when you can get in front of them in a more private environment, they listen. They really do. It's just a matter of getting them to do the right thing when they go to the floor and vote on something.
I think to mirror that, we've heard from doctors who work in partnership with Repro46 that when they have gone to legislators, that they sometimes will throw out a blanket statement of like, I hear what you're saying, that is so wrong, and I'm so sorry, but this is what the constituents want. This is what Oklahoma wants. They are easy and quick to say the state of Oklahoma wants these laws, they support these laws, and just kind of throw that as a blanket statement. So to mirror back, I think the idea of a local level, the idea of we actually know, and polling shows that Oklahomans don't want this, Americans don't want this. Nobody wants their friends or themselves to be going through things like this. So to continue those local, very personal conversations to where they hopefully spread, and then collectively they can no longer hide behind that idea.
Hi. I think it's really important to mention at the same time how the health of people that have miscarriages is in great danger too. Ages ago, I had 3 miscarriages, and after each one, I had a D&C. Well, now, if you have a miscarriage, first of all, the chances of getting that very necessary D&C are slim, and you might even be accused of having had actually an abortion and trying to pawn it off as a miscarriage. This is really important.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for what you went through, but you're exactly right. And that's, we were alluding to this special session in Texas and the bill that just recently passed, and that's exactly what's at stake in Texas now, is they have made it illegal for anyone to sue abortion pill manufacturers for any reason. And we know that those pills are used in the care of miscarriages and a lot of postpartum situations. And so, yeah, it's gotten much more dangerous in Texas, unfortunately.
And to add to what they're still trying to pass this session, which we're not sure if they'll be able to or not, but House Bill 2880 would make it illegal to basically produce any amount of information about abortions on the internet in any capacity. So if you are going through a miscarriage and you're trying to figure out where you can get care, how you can get care, what kind of care you should get, all of that under this bill would be illegal. I don't know if they're going to get it done this session, but the way things are moving, if it's not this one, it will happen in the next one because they've continued to ramp up their attack. So it's just, imagine a world where you need that type of healthcare and you can't even go on the internet to find anything about it at all because it's all illegal.
I have a question. First, just thank you, Dan, for the courage and bravery to share your story so openly from the documentary. Here, I'm sure, like in Texas, it's commingled with their faith, right? It's how we're raised. So I think that's my question for you is, help us have more of these conversations, because I'm like your parents. I used to vote a very different way. I thought a very different way, until you start realizing that you want to have children. There are women that's been taken away from them because we're not, and it's, do you want to live or do you want to see? You not kids, go to the you want to play. See, those are ridiculous conversations. But as we're raised a certain way, we read it here at the Bentonville Farmers Market with our 12-year-old. We had to have a conversation about abortion because Westboro Baptist Church chose to show up at a family fair with pictures of what that is. City. We were not. That was not a conversation we really had with her. And so, but you had to talk about faith, talk about why you're doing it and why we think it's, how do you have those conversations? Help us do that.
It's a really good question, and I think that it's very difficult, and I understand that, and I appreciate that you're wanting to have these conversations. I certainly respect people's faith and their beliefs, and I think that people are entitled to practice faith in the way that they want. I think the best way that you can approach these types of conversations is to just share personal stories, right? And whether you have your own or you know someone who has a story that you can share, if you know our story, you're welcome to share it. I think when you can personalize it for folks, that's when they can start looking at it a different way and help kind of untangle the web that we've all sort of been put in through. I mean, politics have so greatly harmed the way that we look at just basic healthcare, right? And I think if you can talk about it from that perspective and say, look, I understand that we were raised to believe one thing or another, but because of the law or because of our government, this is what people are being put through. That's when I see people really, to your point, recognizing, okay, this isn't right. And maybe I do need to start thinking about it a little bit differently. And it doesn't have to be black or white. It's much more nuanced than I think a lot of us were raised to understand.
I was just going to add, we've spoken at a few Methodist churches in Austin. My grandmother I'll use as a great example. She's been a Methodist almost her whole life. She grew up in a small town in Indiana, very similar, I'm sure, on a farm, very similar, I'm sure, to plenty of folks in this state. And, she taught me at a super young age, sort of the golden rule, right? You should be treating other people how you want to be treated. And I think that's such a good framework as you have conversations in a church or around faith, is you can sometimes bring the conversation down to, just like Amanda was saying, a little more of a personal level, which is tell a story about people and frame it in, is this how how would that make you feel? Or how would you want your daughter, what kind of healthcare would you want if she was in this situation? And kind of frame it in, sometimes you have to kind of slowly get people into the discussion. Maybe not as Amanda said, it's not black and white, so you can't preach, so to speak, but just kind of use those stories to bring people in and frame it in, have you thought about how this might be, does your faith tell you that this is the outcome of a human being that you know and love, right? So I think there's some ways to kind of slowly get at it.
And I think one thing I'll add is you have to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
And you have to understand where they're coming from, and you can't just come in, guns blazing, thinking that you're going to change people's minds overnight. That's not realistic. I think just having the conversation and getting people thinking is a huge step forward. And so thank you for being willing to do that.
Over here.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Sorry, it's me. So, Savannah. I am a pediatrician and married into a family from Fort Wayne. That thinks very differently than I do on most things. And so we had to have a lot of tough conversations. So this is more of a comment perhaps, but I think being in healthcare myself, and you guys are the perfect story. One of the things when I am trying to make my point, and I'm not religious, so I do not go there because I don't have firm beliefs in that way, but I think you guys, and you're a perfect example, is that healthcare, just like any situation we plan for, is a high-risk situation. And in minutes, you can go from what you had, which was a well-managed pregnancy, that completely changes. And so it's just a risk preparedness situation. We need to have all options on the table in any high-risk situation, and healthcare is no different. So I think that is another nice way to message, especially to men, because they will not be pregnant, right? And so that is tough. But I think just thinking about that, it's just really applicable in all situations, in any risk situation. And pregnancy is a high-risk situation by any definition. You have to have all options, whether or not you believe you will need to use them or want to use them, but you have to have them available to you. And so I think for you guys that are having those tough conversations, for people that you may need to convince, I think I suggest that as another tactic that I found great success with.
Yeah, as the example, maybe it would be if you're talking to an elderly man, if you're having a heart attack, would you want to be accepted at a hospital and receive the care that other people in other countries are receiving that we know is life-saving healthcare? Or would you want to be turned away and told, hopefully things resolve themselves on your bathroom floor?
Thank you for being here. Like you, I moved to Central Texas from the upper Midwest, and it was culture shock for me. And I lived there in the 1980s when abortion care was much more accessible. So it's been horrifying to see how it's changed. And I also know what it's like to be an outsider when you're surrounded by native Texans. And so I'm curious, as a kind of a final question, about the future for you all. You clearly love living in Austin. And I know a lot of us have the cognitive disconnect between living someplace we love but not loving the way the atmosphere is evolving around us. And so I'm curious to know if you all will be continuing your fight from within Texas, and what's in the future for you.
Well, it's not my nature to give up. So, it is different living in Austin versus the rest of Texas. So that certainly protects us a little bit, makes it a little more palatable. But yeah, it's not easy, and they're making it harder and harder. For now, I mean, yeah, we're committed to staying in Texas and continuing to fight. I think they, and by then, lawmakers in Texas are doing things to make it even harder and harder for people to speak out, and for people to feel brave enough to stand up for what they believe in. And we've clearly already made a name for ourselves in doing that, and so we're not going to back down. And I think that's exactly what they would want us to do. That's what they want other people to do, which is why they're passing some of these horrible laws. And as my dad would say, that's just not in my nature to shy away from a challenge. I say bring it on.
Yeah, and maybe just to close it out, I think Amanda was just hitting on one point that's very clear, which is the laws that they're passing where you can sue anybody for anything abortion related, basically, right? These are the types of things that they want to make it so that people like us give up, and the people who are fighting this fight give up, because once they know people are giving up, it just is easier for them to progress the rest of their agenda. And I think most of us sort of know inherently that when you're dealing with a bully, the best way to deal with them is to punch back. Otherwise, they'll continue to bully anybody and everybody. So no, we're not going anywhere.
So to quickly wrap this up, I have one thought that I just would be remiss if I didn't share. And my daughter had an anencephaly diagnosis as well. And I get to live the rest of my life not knowing what that would have had to look like. Unlike the woman in the film, I don't have to be further traumatized by the hours that she was awake. Those are not things that are going to ever torment me for the rest of my life, because I had the means and the support to leave. And that's really, really hard to come to terms with when you have to just almost consistently address the fact that not everybody has that and not everybody gets that. And those gut punches, that empathy that you feel, that is the change. The stories and the pain of sitting and watching others' pain. And it doesn't have to be your story, but sharing someone else's and exposing them to that pain, that empathy is something that I really don't think that laws could stand a chance against. However, we have to get to a point of collectively having that empathy. And multiple times through this conversation, I heard questions of how and where and how do we do this and how do we get started. And the good news for you guys is that Repro46 already has a setup. They already have thought through how these conversations can take place and how you can reach out and invite those people that you want to have the conversation with, but do it in a place where everyone knows what they're coming to discuss. You know, you're not sitting at brunch feeling like you got to hardball somebody because they made a comment. They really have structured these conversations where they can even bring in a moderator. They'll work with you. They'll help you create a space where you can begin those, and the empathy can really take root and grow. And I think you guys would agree that that is how we do it.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you're interested and you want to raise your hand, we can jot it down and we can get you on an email list and we can talk about it more. No pressure, but a little pressure.
So, just to follow up on that, the really signature piece of what Repro46 is doing is trying to host what we call open house, open minds conversations with really 5, 6, 7 of your colleagues or friends to come over for an hour or 90 minutes to someone's home, and we provide everything else, all the materials, the facilitator, and we believe that this is the way to start, as Megan, as Amanda, Josh shared, really start promoting that empathy, moving people from judgment to empathy, and starting to really heighten awareness of the personal stories and the fact that this is not about someone else or some other BBU. This is about our sisters and our daughters and our friends and our colleagues who are going to need this kind of care, and it's not available in our state, and the doctors are in the same catch-22. We're really wanting to help provide the care, but feeling that the law is not letting them. So we would really love if you are all interested in raising your hand. We'll pass around just a note card, put your name on it. We'll contact you and see if we can arrange holding these conversations. So everyone would like to raise their hand. Great. I just want to, again, thank our really distinguished guests, Amanda and Josh. Megan, thank you also for your continued support and your willingness to tell your story to our community. You can also tell your friends who were not able to make it that EP streamed this movie. I think I filled it off of the Apple Plus. And I should also say that this movie came out about a year ago, and streaming services were not incredibly, did not want to stream this widely before the election, which I know was really frustrating to the producers. But it's now time to really get the word out, and we would love to try to help get this movie out also to rural communities. So anyway, thank you.
So can you stream it now?
Yes.
Yeah, Apple TV.
I think it's on YouTube too. It's on a couple different platforms.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.